How's it going, fellow reefers? As always, God bless you and thank you for being here. I'm Gage and this is Candy Coral Aquatics. If you're new to my channel, please think about subscribing and hitting that notification bell. This is where I talk about all things reefing, but more importantly, where I share the information I've gathered with you guys on my tank to help you become better hobbyists at the hobby we call reefing. Today's video, we're going to be talking about algae in the system and kind of how to rid it forever. And then we're also going to be giving a tip at the end of the video, something I learned the hard way, and I'm hoping that you guys won't have to do the same thing. So let's jump in today's video. So when we're talking about algae in the aquarium, there's lots of different kinds of algae, lots of different nuisance algae out there, and it all grows in all sorts of different environments, high nutrients, low nutrients, and everything in between. So rather than going over every single type of algae that's out there, let's just group them all together into one topic because it's all stuff that we don't want to have anyways. So getting rid of algae, guys, it's gonna be a simple two-step process. While I say simple, it really might not be that easy, but the process is easy enough. So the first thing we have to be doing is testing. We need to figure out what our nutrient level is. Now remember, if you have a lot of nutrients in the water and you also have a lot of algae in the water, a lot of times your test kits are gonna read low nutrients because the algae is sucking the nutrients out of the water in order to grow. So your test kits might not always be that helpful. In extreme cases like this, it's obvious to the eye that something is wrong. And just knowing what we know about nutrients and algae, we can just assume that our nutrients are high regardless of what our test kits show. Now, to make even more, complicated, or to make this even more complicated, sometimes there is algae that can grow in ultra low nutrient environments. So our nutrient levels are actually really low. You're just unlucky enough to have a type of algae that doesn't care. So how do we get rid of both kinds? First thing everybody should be doing is weekly water changes. 35% or so every single week, pulling out of the tank and then putting in good water, fresh water back into the system is really the easiest way that you guys can kind of combat this algae and combat nutrients altogether. However, this isn't going to be very beneficial if you're a heavy feeder or you're somebody that's constantly dosing and adding supplementation to the tank for your corals and your fish, because once a week doing a 35% water change, if the rest of the week you're polluting that tank water and you're feeding too much, it's really not going to matter. So make sure that you cut back a little bit, you don't have such a heavy hand with feeding, and you assess exactly how much you're dosing and how much supplementation as far as coral foods and fish food goes that you're adding to the tank. Remember guys, fish can get by on a lot less than you might think, so be a little bit stingy and try to cut back on the feeding. So once we've controlled the feeding and we're doing our weekly water changes, what is the next step? Well, we gotta have some sort of a cleanup crew. This is a two-step process. The first process is us being responsible, doing our husbandry and cutting back on feeding and adding nutrients to the tank. The next step to this process is to have a diverse cleanup crew that's gonna go after multiple different things. It should consist of all sorts of different snails and all sorts of different crabs if your reef will allow it. This will allow you to tackle multiple different species of algae, including the stuff that likes to grow in ultra low nutrient environments. So a really good way to go about this is jump on Live Aquaria and then go to their cleanup crew section where they can actually build a pack for you. You don't have to buy from Live Aquaria, and to be quite honest, I don't ever buy anything from Live Aquaria, but it is a really good source to go for information. So you can actually go to their cleanup crew section and you can hand pick, which is what I do when I'm trying to find information on something, a cleanup crew. So you're going to want to go to build your own crew or whatever it is that they call it, and they'll list all the cleanup crew that they have available. Now, what's nice about this is as you click on each individual one, it'll actually tell you what that species will eat. So if you know what kind of algae you have, you can actually select the appropriate critter to go after that algae. But let's remember, cleanup crews are not an excuse to be lazy. You need to be doing water changes, cutting back on feeding, and removing by hand physically as much as that algae as possible, because really removing that algae by hand is really going to be one of the #1 ways to get rid of it for good. So once you guys have kind of done that and you read up on your cleanup crew and you pick out a diverse cleanup crew to help you go after this algae, you'll be well on your way of eradicating it forever. So it sounds simple enough, but it can be pretty complicated, so give it some time and remember that nothing in a reef tank happens quickly. It's going to take patience and a lot of time. But if you're cutting back on your nutrients and you have that diverse cleanup crew, it's going to be a big step in the right direction. After that, if you still find that you're having issues, maybe you're just unfortunate to have a particular type of algae that's just really a bugger to get rid of, and you're gonna have to do some online research and some forums and try to figure out exactly what kind it is that you have. When all else fails, you can do a blackout on your tank where you turn all the lights off, wrap the tank up so no light can get in, and you leave it that way for about 3 or 4 days. Now your coral and your fish will be fine, but after about 3 days or so, most of that algae is going to be dead and dying off. So then immediately do a water change, because if you don't, all that decaying matter in the tank is just going to feed new algae. So what is the tip that I have for you guys today that I learned the hard way? Well, you guys know that I'm getting into Acropora, right? And Acropora comes with its own, how do I say, frustrations. So I recently ordered some stuff from Worldwide Corals. And while I was dealing with Worldwide Corals, I actually talked to some of their people, and I got put on a lighting schedule specifically from Worldwide Corals they actually use on their tanks that has been scientifically proven to grow coral. So I'll be letting you guys know how that goes as the weeks progress. I've been running that setup for probably about a handful of days now, so it's too early to tell what kind of results I'll be getting from it. But it is a 12-hour cycle, and I have the exact Hydra setup, which is the exact same setup that WWC uses on their Hydras to actually grow corals in their display tanks. It's a 12-hour cycle, and it ramps up and down as the day progresses, as it would outside, as the sun is at its highest point and then as its lowest point. It starts off in the morning, with a lot of white light, and then as the day progresses, that white light goes away, and then it becomes all blue for the next handful of hours throughout the day. So we're getting that daytime cycle where the corals are exposed to a lot of light, and then less and less and less and less as the day progresses. So if you guys are interested on what those exact specifications are, we can talk about them in a later video. So what did I order from WWC? Well, I ordered some cotton candy Aussie Lords, some blueberry Acropora, some palette blue Acropora, and then the Zoa that everybody was trying to guess. It is called the Superstar Zoanthan. Now, this is the first time I had ever ordered from WWC, and I have to admit, a couple of the pieces that I received, I wasn't really impressed with. The coloration on them was nothing like what it was online, and I'm sad to report that the Zoanthan is one of those. When you're spending $80 a polyp, you expect it to look like what it does online, so I called and I did kind of lodge a complaint about that. However, I have noticed over the few days that the color is starting to come back, and they basically just told me whenever you ship coral, you can expect that it's going to lose color, but if you are concerned about it, send us a picture and we'll make sure that you actually received what it is that you bought. I will admit, as the days have progressed, the color has come back in them a little bit, but we're still way off of where I think we should be. So the blue palette Acropora and the blueberry Acropora, those are looking pretty good, and those look like what I saw online. Some color has come back into those, so I'm happy with those. And then the cotton candy Aussie Lords, those are also a work in progress. They're starting to get more pink than they were, but we're still not quite there yet, so I'll be updating you guys on those. Now for the tip that you all have been waiting for. Dun, 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 dun. Boom! That right there, my friends, was one of my Acropora. So this was actually one of my favorite Acropora. This was that bright teal one that used to sit up in the back. And now you can see that I have transformed it by a very painstaking process into an ultra rare white Acropora that can both live in and outside of the tank. This is worth roughly $27 million. And if you would like a frag of it, you can let me know. Now, all joking aside, guys, I fried it. So here's kind of what happened. I had a wee bit of a breakout of flatworms. And where the flatworms came from, I'm pretty sure was from a fish store out on the other side of the state that I had bought some Acropora from a long, long time ago. And I noticed I had some flatworms, or what I thought were flatworms, a long time ago. But I wasn't 100% sure if they were flatworms, because when I looked them up online, they were basically stating, oh, this is what they look like. They were these big, ugly things, and they were supposed to be all over your coral. And I was like, well, that's not what I have. They're only on the glass, so we're just going to let it go. Long story short, short, as time progressed, I found out they were flatworms, and unfortunately, I did get a handful of the Acropora eating variety. I was very lucky that 95% of the flatworms I had were the harmless little brown ones, but I did have a few of the white ones that did kind of munch on a couple of my Acropora. So I did get some flatworm exit from Salivate, I believe is what it's called, and I added that to the tank, and I've done that a few times, and now I'm pleased to report, as far as I can tell, I don't have flatworms anymore. Now, flatworms are pretty hard to get rid of, so as the weeks progress, I will actually be adding doses here and there about every 7 days, which is the life cycle of a flatworm. We can't kill the eggs with anything, so if I wait 7 days and then add some, wait 7 days and add some, I should hopefully be catching them in between that life cycle and eventually eradicate all of them. As of right now, if I had to give you guys like an easy number, if I had 1,000 flatworms, I probably only have 5 now. So I don't have any more of the Acropora eating variety, and the way that I can tell is my Acropora is no longer being ate. So if you have Acropora eating flatworms, you will actually see the Acropora diminish pretty quickly. So I'm glad to report that that is gone, and the flatworm issue seems to be eradicated as well. But how did I fry this Acropora? Well, I noticed that it wasn't very happy, and at the base of it, you could actually see where a little bit of tissue was receding. So I said, okay, well, that's probably some of the flatworms going to work. But I wasn't 100% sure, because in the case of Acropora eating flatworms, all over the coral, you will actually see circular white bites where the worms are eating, and that's not what I had. So I wasn't really 100% sure what was going on. So I took the coral out, I coral dipped it, and that wasn't the issue. I'll tell you where I messed up. So you guys have probably heard that freshwater dips, unlike zoanthids and some other types of corals, as well as fish, can be very effective at eradicating all sorts of different pests. So what did my stupid butt do? I freshwater dipped my Acropora, and it fried it. So the moral of this story is, go ahead and do some coral dips. They're great for your coral from time to time, especially when you're adding new coral. Just never dunk your Acropora in fresh water, assuming that it's going to get rid of an issue. That probably should have been a given, but like I said, guys, I experiment here, so you don't have to. So now you know, don't ever freshwater dip your Acropora. Until next time, guys, take care and God bless. If you have any comments, leave them down below. And if you guys want me to make a video on any specific topic, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Take care, guys. Stay safe and God bless.